With everything coming to the close of the Super Bowl, this might be the last conversation we kind of talk about, even though it's not like super connected. It kind of is a little bit. So Kid Rock joined Real Time with Bill Maher. So not only did he show some respect for Kendrick Lamar's Super Bowl halftime show performance in the appearance on the show, but he also said that he doesn't think it would have happened without the NFL's DEI initiatives. Yet Kid Rock also mocks DEI at the same time for being bullshit, suggesting that he lacks the understanding of what DEI actually is and the importance in a society built off of white supremacy. So the question becomes like, is this the case, or is he just trying to own the libs, aka Bill Maher, or is there something else involved? But here's the clip so we can actually kind of see it all in real time. No pun intended.
I see what you did there.
I mean, or maybe there was.
What did you think of this year's Super Bowl? When you mentioned DEI, people complained about that.
To put it nicely, it wasn't my cup of tea, but I got to respect it. And here's why. You know, I grew up loving, emulating hip-hop, all things hip-hop, breakdancing, DJing, graffiti, rapping. I understand the culture a little bit more than most. And when I say most, of course, I mean white people. After there's a lot of things going through your head, everyone's like, that sucked, this, that, and the other. I'm like, this kid pretty much came out figuratively with both middle fingers in the air, doing what he does for the people who love what he does, unapologetically. And I don't think he gives a frog's fat ass what anyone thinks about it.
Like you.
Well, that's what I'm saying. I'm like, so I go, it's pretty much how I built my whole career. I got to respect it.
Right. Yeah, okay, there we go. Common ground.
I think a lot of people, I've heard nobody answer this question yet, like, how did he get that gig? Jay-Z. All right, what happened there? I think Jay-Z and Kendrick Lamar should both send Colin Kaepernick a bundt cake and a six-pack of beer and a thank you note with a bunch of money in it. Because without him kneeling and getting everyone's panties in a bunch over the anthem, self-included, I don't think that happens. And by the way, wait, one more point. This was the epitome of DEI. Like, this is the epitome of DEI blowing up. Because, the NFL was all this DEI and racism, all this stuff. They got Jay-Z in there booking this. And, like, Kendrick Lamar goes out there and basically turns DEI into an IED. It's like, it's all black people, or all people of color, speaking to his crowd in the hood, black people. And it was, like, the most non-exclusive, or the most exclusive thing ever. And I'm like, yeah, that's awesome. I'm laughing my ass off.
But, okay.
There's a lot to unpack there.
You know what?
So
the thing he said about Colin Kaepernick and them sending him some money and some beer and flowers or whatever, he's exactly right there. And I've been very much critical of Kid Rock for a lot of different reasons on this show. But I tell you what, that particular thing that he said, he's very right. Because, I remember seeing that particular clip when you see Jay-Z sitting in the room with Roger Goodell and, that whole thing of, and this is something I think when they talk about the totality of Jay-Z's entire career, might bite him in the ass a little bit, is when he says, we're past kneeling. And this, but mind you, when he said we're past kneeling, this is before George Floyd. This is before, all of a sudden it just got crazy with the amount of police misconduct. But I do think Jay-Z was brought to the table because it's like, okay, we can't be seen as so against just think about the majority of the NFL workforce as far as the product you see on the field.
Right.
We cannot be seen as being against them. That's why I think the NFL has still said, we're committed to diversity, equity, and inclusion. Now, what that means to whoever hears that, it can mean a lot of different things because, if you knew what DEI actually stood for, because what it is, they frame it to where you hear DEI and you hear black people.
Yep. Exactly.
But they don't say it to where it includes women. It doesn't include people with disabilities. It doesn't include veterans because that's really who's at the top of the list as far as DEI is concerned. But that's another conversation. We're just going to get back to what Kid Rock said. I do believe that, Jay-Z was in a position, has been in the position to pick the halftime shows. And honestly, you can say it's DEI or whatever. It's a result of Colin Kaepernick. But when you look at the numbers,
yeah,
it was the right move for the NFL and Roger Goodell to make.
Which is kind of the case with most DEI programs. It's actually, This whole narrative that's been co-opted, which has been co-opted many times, just like woke got co-opted.
Yeah, exactly.
All these other things that
just
got
like
co-opted.
CRT got co-opted.
It's like DEI. No, it's in place for a reason, and it doesn't mean you pick the worst candidates. It just means that you have a larger pool of candidates to choose from. That's all that it means. I mean, it means more than that, but
without the optics just being on one group of people.
yeah, it doesn't mean only black people.
Exactly.
And that's literally how what it's turned
only,
in.
or only Hispanics, or only
or
That's
only
what it's been-
veterans, or only it is. It makes it to where, hey, you're in a lot of people in corporate America are in a position where they can ignore these folks. Look, I can make it a little bit personal. When I used to hire people for this fundraising program situation here in town, I'll say it, WFYI. I used to work for the PBS and NPR affiliate.
Yeah, I'll say it.
Yeah, why not?
Say
It's
it.
a good 10 years since I've been gone. I used to hire people on the phone because, first of all, it was basically a situation where you were trying to fundraise over the phone. So if you could convince me that you were able to do the job over the phone, that's how I was able to hire you. But also, there might have been some bias if you came in and you were in a wheelchair, or you came in and you were too old, or you came in whatever. That might have peppered how I felt about you and whether or not I wanted to hire you for a particular program. Now, I'm not saying that I would not have hired, these people based on these things, but I know I took that particular thing off the table because I hired everybody over the phone. So people would come to the room where the call center was, and it'd be a guy who was a Korean War veteran. It would be a guy in a wheelchair. It'd be, someone fresh out of college. I had someone who was in high school work for me. It was truly a meritocracy, because if you couldn't convince me over the phone that you deserved a job, I figured you couldn't convince me or you couldn't convince our donors over the phone to continue to contribute money. Now, like I said, I'm not saying like that was my thing. But you just have to understand that, there aren't people that have a certain mentality to where, like, I'll just hire my idiot cousin who needs a job, and I'll put that person in place before I put someone in place who's actually talented enough to do what I need them to do.
Like the current regime in the White House.
And that same thing is going on now. I mean, we talked about nepotism, and that's been going on across the board in every position, every company. I don't care where you talking about. It's happened. You know what I'm saying?
We've all seen it.
I don't personally, in certain instances, I don't see anything wrong with it. But there are a lot of candidates that weren't qualified for that job, and they just got it based on nepotism. And my issue with him, though, with what Kid Rock said, I mean, a broken clock is right at least twice a day. So he got some things right with this conversation, but he also got some things wrong. My issue with him on this whole DEI thing and Kendrick is, why do people, well, some white people, not all, but a lot of white people, deem blackness as DEI and scary? Because that's exactly pretty much what he's saying on this performance. Kendrick's performance was real black and was real pretty much
It's for people in the hood.
Yeah, that was
it was against the system as a whole.
Yeah.
It didn't pinpoint any one person or one group. This is the system. We live in a system in America that needs to be fixed and things need to be addressed. So he addressed it in his way. It wasn't like in your face, but the people that got it. There's a lot of people that didn't get it. That's my problem with him as far as this being a DEI situation. And then Kendrick has always used black people for his performances. He's black. Just like if Kid Rock gets up there and performs, I'm pretty sure everybody on the stage in his band are probably going to be white.
Well, he actually said on this, he's like, no, this is actually interesting that you say that, because right after this part in this conversation that he was having with Bill, was he mentioned, he's like, a lot of the people in my old bands were black and different, or whoever was the best, it wasn't any of this DEI bullshit. It's just kind of like, how can you on one hand,
that's not DEI
say,
though.
For sure. Exactly. Yeah. Right. It's just like this really dumbified down thing.
I see where you're going.
It's always like, why does a certain demographic always fall for this, or are they really falling for it? They're not really falling for it, but like, how are you so smart about this? Like being able to decipher that Kendrick Lamar is reversing DEI with all black people, and then not also understand over here that that's not actually what it
has nothing to do with it.
How do you understand this complex idea, but you fail on this really simple one?
But MC Hammer did the same exact thing. When MC Hammer went on tour with all of his dancers and singers, everybody was black. But that doesn't have anything. That's not a slight against anybody else. And I think what people don't understand is just because my group or my representation is a representation of me does not mean that this is DEI. This is just me. This is who I am. I mean, there's white people that work for PG Lang. They're not performers, but they work for the PG Lang company. So I don't understand what is so scary about a bunch of black people performing at the Super Bowl.
But it always appears that black culture, to your point, it always comes off as it's spooky or it's scary and it's alienating everybody else that's in the crowd. But you never hear that about any other races when it comes to a performance. That's all I see. He alienated everybody. Nobody in the stadium in the world could relate. What? Just because he's speaking to where he comes from and he used his culture to perform and use that platform, what's the problem?
Well, the problem is white supremacy. And,
all right.
And not to just throw a random term out there because it's not, but like that's where all this is derived from. That's why DEI initiatives exist in the first place, is because people recognize that this is a thing and that certain people are marginalized more than others, and that there needs to be some sort of check and some type of check and balance in place to kind of balance the playing field to some degree. So
there's
it's
a disconnect somewhere that to where people think that being black is not American.
That's part of it. That is a large part of it, to where there's always been an otherness assigned to. It doesn't matter how many wars we fight in. It doesn't matter, how many presidents we have. It doesn't matter what it is that we contribute to the fabric of America. It's always like, but you're not really American. And that's, I think about, we always talk about the greatest generation, the people who won World War II. Yeah, but when you really start digging into the stories that black World War II veterans tell, especially about when they came home, there's no ticker tape parade. When you see all that video, you don't see any black soldiers. When it was time for them to get the GI Bill, something just wasn't going on. Something didn't happen. So, a lot of times you say the greatest generation, but when you really look at the great, quote unquote, greatest generation, they're really racist.
Yes.
And I know that's something that's very hard to hear, especially if your white grandfather fought in World War II. It may not have been his fault, but like you can watch any story. There's a story I wish I could remember on Netflix right now about, the black female,
that's what I was actually going to bring up.
And it was like, we were trying to win a war.
Yes.
And we still had to fight white racism.
Yeah, they literally were sent to the worst place they could be sent to, had to redo the whole thing for
what are you talking about?
Air Force.
I don't know what you're talking about.
It's what he's saying. He's talking about a specific movie during the World War II.
Movie. Okay.
Yeah, that's about women soldiers.
I see.
Who were sent overseas to fight in this war and were given dilapidated conditions, and they themselves had to pretty much
create their own
barracks. They had to build their own barracks up, and then their job was to get the mail delivered to soldiers, well, not soldiers, to their family back home because they weren't receiving the mail.
And it was a morale problem as far as, and that's, and when you watch this, it's like the United States is trying to win a war, but couldn't stop being racist. Even in the throat, it's the same thing with the Tuskegee Airmen.
Yeah.
It's the same thing, and when they got back home, it was like, there was no thank you for your service. It was like, just go get out of here. Like, so there's a lot, and we just think, okay, Martin Luther King came along and it's all better, gone. And the Cosby Show came on and you elected Barack Obama and there's no more racism, and it's like, no, there are still systemic problems and things that we have to address and have to be honest about. That's the problem. We don't want to be honest about that. Like I said,
we need to get to the core root of the problem here, which is just because something is black does not deem it not American. So his performance was actually very American. It was American to the core. When you talk about things that happen, you got the Uncle Sam representation, you had the flag. Now there was symbolic things going on with that, but it was still American. And I think that people need to hold others accountable for acting like black isn't American at the end of the day.
And also, the most American thing is we got to get this dirty foreigner up off our soil, coming up here thinking he can run rap music, which is an American idea. So get him out of here. Get Canada off the stage.
Hey, listen, that's a whole nother situation that I want to address when we talk about that.
Yeah.
I mean, It's a very, I mean, I'm not going to go too deep into this, but this is why I don't talk to half of my family. Not literally. And,
No, we know.
And why half my family has literally had the like I've tried to have conversations with certain family members about my grandfather, who are of the greatest generation and did fight in World War II, and how he's my grandfather and I love him and all this other stuff. And obviously, but it doesn't mean that he didn't do racist things.
Exactly.
And I'm sorry that you can't process that in your head, but I can love my grandfather and also be honest about the things that I saw and witnessed.
Crazy that Jay Moore talked about, you guys are talking about that era, because any elder that I spoke to in my family that served, to your point about your grandfather, it was the total opposite of the ticker tape. It was only people that was happy to see me was my wife,
my family,
and my kids. That's who I came home to. There was no parade. There was no celebration. And they talked about if there was any type of get together at the house, it was all family. Like there was no decorated war veteran. You know, you're coming home and everybody's excited. They just went back to the house.
You know, the white soldiers did not embrace the black soldiers as we're brothers in arms. Know, when we get back to the United States of America, Jim Crow was still in effect. In fact, part of the problems that were affecting morale during World War II is, once again, another story, but I won't get too deep into it. In England, when black soldiers would go to the pubs or whatever they had over there, they'd have to fight the white soldiers because they were like, well, no, they were trying to bring Jim Crow overseas with them. And the thing is, the white pub owners, they would say, okay, to alleviate this problem, we won't let the white soldiers in. You know what I'm saying? And then that caused a problem. And so you had white soldiers literally trying to attack and kill black. Like I said, we're trying to win a war.
Yes, we're supposed to be on the same team.
But racist, that's how important racism is to America. It's like, it's not, we can't put a pause on it to even try to win a war.
Watch the movie.
And to understand it. Like,
watch Red Tails. There's a scene about that in Red Tails.
Yeah.
They go into a bar and automatically start fighting.
Yeah.
Their own teammates, essentially.
Yeah.
But even like the GI Bill, in the...
that's where redlining comes from.
I mean, like, my grandfather got money from fighting in World War II to build a house.
Yes.
Yeah.
There's people just now getting money that fought in Vietnam, and it's for health-related reasons.
Facts.
Or just saying that, okay, you were in Vietnam, you may have been exposed to Agent Orange, so we're going to pay you now. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? Versus when you got home, I'm going to kick you back. So, I mean, this is an ongoing thing with being in this country. And I always hate the divide because it's almost like you act like we're not here too.
Yeah.
Like our experience may be different than your experience, but at the end of the day, we're still American. I mean, our sound, our music, our influence has been pretty deep as far as what has sown the fabric of America. And I just want it to be respected at the end of the day.
There's no reason to just not acknowledge that. And like us as white Americans, it's not like it's okay.
Yeah.
It's okay. Like it's frustrating to me just in general to like the lack of acknowledgement that I can get some, definitely my elders, just to accept that, things are not exactly as you want them to be. Because even my elders that maybe have a problem with DEI initiatives, bringing it back here and all this stuff, like they think everything is okay now and that it's fine. And it's like, no, it's not. That's why these things exist. And we can literally point to how this has, like, we can follow the path of how this has just turned into a modern day form of it. It's not, of course, it's not as what it was in the 60s or even the 80s or anything like that, but it has morphed into different forms of things that we can see and we can point out very easily. So
people find a new way to be racist every day. Right. Just like DEI has turned to the new N-word, essentially.
Just like affirmative action
was woke. You know what I'm saying? All of that has
CRT.
Turned into
these are just fancy ways.
Yeah, they're the derogatory terms now. Yeah, based off of what you think it is. And I know people always like to say, well, do your research. A lot of people doing the research or claiming they do the research are doing surface level research and don't know exactly what this is. Just like you brought up that DEI doesn't just help black people. A lot of people think that it's only for black people.
That's why you can get them to be so upset about it.
For Kid Rock to say that, for him to say this is a DEI situation, granted, there's some truth, like you said, behind that with the whole Colin Kaepernick situation and Jay-Z being hired and blah, blah, blah. But, I mean, when we talk historically about Super Bowl performances,
you could say that is literally a proponent or a positive thing that has happened because of DEI.
Exactly.
Kendrick is the person that should have been there, and he was, because the right people and things were in place to allow him to be that.
Absolutely.
Right. So what are we saying, Kid?
Yeah, because you're pretty much demonizing the situation.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, the Super Bowl was too black.
Well, I mean,
it's just too black.
Yeah, but at the same time, when I look at the charts, and when we always talk about how things are tabulated, and we look at the metrics, it was too pop. Kendrick's going to have the #1 album in the country this week. His song, he has five songs in the top 10. In the top 20.
Yes.
Like when you say too black,
top 10.
Yeah. So that's almost you. That's literally you saying I'm that much out of touch. When you hear people say these things, I'm that much out of touch of what's actually happening in pop culture right now.
It's crazy. It's crazy. The concept of actually having to fight for respect or steal in something that you were a founder in is the craziest concept to me.
Yeah, because Kid Rock is a DEI hire in the world of hip hop. If you want to deem,
if we're gonna keep it a
buck.
Yeah, if we're gonna keep it a buck.
And I'm just being funny, because he uses it. You know what I'm saying?
No, I mean
he said it with such confidence to DEI comment.
Look, he's a DEI. I don't know if I would call it DEI hire, but once again, like even when you look at what he has on, once again, Kid Rock is a fraud, even if as a white trash hero, if you will. Once again, it doesn't surprise me his political stances these days, because this is where he comes from. You know, he was born. And this is not. I'm not knocking being a child of privilege.
No,
you have two people from the polar opposite sides of how they came up with from his city, or not city, but at least surrounding area, Detroit.
Yeah,
you have Eminem and you have him. When we talk about the white rap artist, so to speak, you know what I'm saying? And Eminem is totally opposite him. I know Eminem and him are cool or whatnot, but they have different views. But when we talk about somebody that doesn't represent what they're talking about, or what their music is, his what do you say, his influence coming up, the only person I can point to is Eminem.
But when he talks about, I was influenced by hip hop, the elements is like, so
he mentioned everything.
How did you get from recognizing and being a fan of the elements of hip hop to wearing Confederate flags around your neck?
Because he's a grifter.
Yeah, I mean, like that's, I know the answer.
It's
obvious.
Know what I'm saying?
I'm putting it out there.
But it's obvious.
Yeah, he's grifting because he realized that it works for him, and he doesn't, he feels more safe around it.
Yeah, but then again, this is, for him, acknowledging the 4 elements. That's cool that you were able to do a little research and you were able to memorize you had some hip hop flashcards or whatever.
He's definitely a hip hop flashcards guy.
But you 100%. Are like you with the Confederate flag on. That's who you are. And don't say, it represents Southern culture, because if it didn't, when we talk about getting rid of the Confederate monuments and how the stars and bars aren't cool, if it didn't mean that, people like Kid Rock wouldn't fight so hard for it.
Mm-hmm. And wouldn't be hanging out with Ted Nugent.
Yeah. Once again, guys from a few miles away from Canada repping Southern culture.
Yeah.
No, he lives in Nashville now, so there you go.
Yeah, well,
And they booed him. Well, they didn't boo him. They just didn't cheer for him.
He got
mad, didn't he? Didn't he walk off stage?
He was upset.
He got off stage because they weren't like clapping or something.
He had his panties in a bunch. He said that he wears panties because he talkked about a group of people that had their panties in a bunch, and he said he was one of them.
Yeah.
So
I would have laughed. Yeah, if I'd been there, I definitely would laugh.
Yeah, that's definitely a show I never want to see in my life
at all. Don't need to see that. Yeah,
and people are still drinking Bud Light. It is what it is.
It is what it is.
Him included.
Yeah, exactly.
That part.
Yep.
That's the Kid Rock.
Not really.
I like the little person he used to hang with.
Yeah, that's DEI, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Rest in peace to him.
Yeah. Oh, that's right. He passed away.
Hey, Jay Moore, you got to chill, man. Everything is DEI, 99% black, and then everything else.
Well,
that's what they tell you.
When you actually do the metrics, and this is, I want to include everybody in this, because black people included too, because DEI is not just a representation of you, and you actually did not benefit from it as much as you thought. And I experienced that with my current situation, but I'm not going to talk about it on the show. But there is no DEI in place from where what I'm doing. I had to get in on my own. I had to grind on my own in order to get to the position I'm at.
That's the thing. What they're trying to do, and we'll let this go, is they are trying to dismiss certain people's hard work.
Yeah.
And in a lot of, they try to dismiss, certain people's hard work, but at the same time, when you just look at people who are being appointed to positions in government now.
Come on, man.
These people have no business being
Zero qualifications.
And that's the kind of thing that, you know, we talk about, is where it's like, hey, here I am. I have a degree in this. I have a degree in this. I have experience here and experience here. And you just hire this guy who said he likes you.
It's the entire irony of the entire situation.
Yeah. At the end of the day, all of it is American.
Facts.
Yeah. The good and the bad. It's American.
Can't ignore it.
Come on, man.